against Ogat first?
Yeah, just do that one. The other ones are too quick.
Okay. Alright. So this is a game you played. Okay, so you played E3. It's fine, I guess. Okay, you played knight C3. It's weird. I think you should play C4 first if you're gonna play this, because like you usually want to develop this pawn. You're observing me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I would recommend playing that first because you gain more space in the center for yourself.
Okay.
But okay, so he played D5. See, because now it's kind of awkward, like where you're putting your bishop on C1. I mean, that's also another reason why E3 is not like great as a first move. But okay.
Yeah, I mouse split.
Yeah, I figured, but yeah, I mean, mouse doesn't mean you have to like play badly necessarily. Okay, so he plays bishop A6. Okay, so you castle, which is fine. Take, yeah. Okay, so you play E4, which is good because now you're getting your bishop out. So okay, so he took, yeah, he took, fine, queen d5. Okay, so yeah, so now did you go to this endgame right away or what? Okay, you did.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you could just play something like rook e1. Because I mean, you want to get your rook into the game, right? So, I mean, I guess it's the same thing. I guess the question is, do you want his pawn on d5 or on e6? Yeah, I mean, I guess queen takes queen is fine. Just trying to think if there's something better. I mean, yeah, it's probably fine. Yeah, I mean, it gives you an even pawn structure, and you're just up development, so this should be slightly better for you. Okay, so you play bishop g5. Okay, that's good, because now you're threatening to play something like rook e1 and force his king to uncastle. And if he plays f6, then he gives himself a weakness on e6. So bishop g5 I think is a good move. Okay, you played f6. Okay, so now you play bishop f. Oh, okay, so I think you should play bishop f4 here, gain another tempo, right?
Yeah, to get the scope on too.
Yeah, exactly. So now your bishop's looking at this whole diagonal, but more importantly, like you're not wasting a move. I mean, another thing you could have done here is actually you could have played this first, rook e1. So you basically gain a move that way, and then if he plays here, then you play here and you gain another move. Because now what's really good is he can't play this because you have this, which wins, right? So
Yeah.
so maybe rook fe1 is actually more accurate first, because you can actually kind of bait him into making a bigger mistake. I mean, because theoretically, he should probably play something like this as his best move here. But then again, here and then you should. I mean, this should be good for you because you have your open rook file and you have your bishop with scope. But yeah, bishop e3 I don't think is as accurate just because now your bishop's kind of just stuck behind your pawns.
Yeah, it's a tall pawn.
Yeah, exactly, tall pawn. So he played
Yeah.
bishop d6 and you played what? Rook e1. Okay. Yeah. See, the problem is you didn't like you could have gotten your rook here with a free move, but you didn't get to. So. Okay, so you play rook e1, he castled, and now played c3. Okay, so yeah, now the question is, you need to get your pieces active, right? So like c3 doesn't really accomplish anything per se.
Yeah.
So you have to like right here you have to try to figure out what your plan's gonna be. So what do you think would be a viable plan here? Like it's tough
Oh,
because he doesn't really have many weaknesses.
yeah. I was just trying to get to an end game quickly as
Well, I
possible.
mean, you got to the end game though, but I mean now you have to start thinking because this is still our end game. Like I mean, you've only used a minute to get to this position, which is fine, but I mean, really this position is pretty much equal, I'd say. So you kind of have to figure out what you want to do to try to get an advantage.
Yeah.
So I mean, c3 doesn't really do anything to accomplish that. I mean, you see how c3 doesn't do anything, right?
hmm
Okay, so what could you try to do instead?
Maybe open up the C file.
Okay, but what's the problem with opening up the c file?
Huh. I'm not real sure.
Okay, well, okay, say you play rook c1, he plays knight here, and you play c4, right? And
Yeah.
he opens the c file. Okay, so what's the problem here? Who has a weakness now?
He does.
Okay, what's his
I
weakness?
I do actually.
Okay, what's your weakness?
The isolated pawn on D4.
Exactly. So if he can try to get his knight from d7 to this square d5, blockade the pawn, and he should actually be better here because now this bishop is much worse than this bishop. So you have to make sure that when you try to gain an advantage for yourself, that you're not simultaneously giving yourself a disadvantage that's worse.
Hmm.
So if you want to open the C file, you'd have to make sure that you did it in a way where you weren't isolating this pawn. And right now that seems difficult to do. So I'm not sure that opening the C file is necessarily the best plan. So what's another possibility? Well, what pieces would you like to exchange in this position if you had your choice?
I would say knight for bishop.
Your knight for his bishop.
Yeah.
Okay, but that still doesn't take care of the problem you have, which is what? Like,
Uh,
which is your worst piece right now?
Bishop on e3.
Right. So what do you want to exchange?
Two bishops.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could even exchange this bishop for this knight, and it wouldn't be bad. But really, your worst minor piece, or your worst piece overall, is really this bishop because like you said yourself, it's a tall pawn. So when you play c3, I mean, does that make this bishop better or make it worse?
Makes it worse.
Yeah, exactly. So in this position, you have to try to think, how can I exchange this bishop, or at least make it do something more active? So I mean, you even have like, I mean, I'm not saying this is a good idea, but I'm saying at least an idea that makes more sense would be to play something like a3, and then your idea is you want to play this and this, and then if he takes, you take, and then you open this file for yourself. So I'm not saying that's necessarily a good plan, but I'm saying at least it makes more sense than playing c3 and basically shutting your bishop out of the queen side entirely. But
Right.
another idea might be to reroute this knight, because right now this knight is, what is it looking at? It's looking at this pawn that's defended, that's not even attacked. It's looking at this square, which is defended. It's looking at this square, which is defended. And it's looking at this square, which is on the side of the board and can easily be, uh, easily can be the squares can be taken away. Like this square can be taken away just by this move. So this knight is probably not well posted currently either. It's not a bad piece per se, but it could be doing more. So, say if this knight were on its opposite side on c3, okay, then at least it would be attacking this pawn. And if black plays something like c6, then okay, at least he's creating more weaknesses on the squares. So
Yeah.
another idea would be maybe to reroute this knight somewhere. I'm not exactly sure what the best square for it is yet, but I mean, you could do something like rook e2. And then you'd actually have a double-pronged idea. So one would be to play something like this, and then play like this and this. But another idea would be just simply to get your rooks getting doubled on the e-file. So there's a lot of choices you have here. I mean, there's not really that much tension in this position, so it's going to be a lot of maneuvering. Like you can waste a few moves, moving your knight around to different squares, and not be too worried that you're going to be wasting tempo because again, not much is going on. I mean, he has to get this knight out. He has to do something with his rooks. He probably has to do something with his pawn structure. So I mean, he's going to be spending a lot of time doing stuff too. So you have plenty of time to kind of fix your position. But you want to
Mhm.
make sure that if you're doing something cohesive. That you're making a plan. And really, I can't possibly imagine what you were planning to do after C3. I mean, it doesn't like I don't really see like what your follow up was.
Yeah.
So you have to ask yourself in these positions, like, what pieces do I have that are good? What pieces do I have that are bad? And how can I change the pieces that I have that are bad into pieces that I have that are good? So the first few times that you ask yourself these questions, it might take you 4 or 5 minutes to figure something out. I mean, which is fine because you used a minute so far for 14 moves. So if you use 5 minutes, it's fine. But as you get more experience, you'll soon realize, that okay, maybe I wanted to open the C file, but no, so that isolates my D pawn. So then, next thing you look at is okay, what piece is bad, the bishop, and maybe that'll take you, a minute or 2 minutes, as you get more experience with it, and then eventually it'll just become second nature to you that okay, this bishop looks silly. I want to try to exchange it. I didn't play bishop f4 when I had the chance, so now is there a way for me to exchange these pieces? So, those are just things to think about. I mean, like I said, like it's not drastically wrong that you played c3. It's just you want to kind of mold the way you're thinking
Yeah.
because it'll help you in all sorts of positions, not just this one where not much is going on. So, okay. So I think I spent enough time talking about c3. So knight d7, rook c1. Okay, so you played rook c1 now. And again, if you're playing c3, why would you play rook c1? Because if you played c3, you're probably not going to play c4. because then again that's a waste of tempo. So it seems like you're
Yeah.
just kind of putting your pieces on squares that you think look good, but really you're not, doing something active. So he played rook c, he played h3. Okay, now he's doing something active with c5. Okay, so you captured, and then he captured with the bishop. Okay, so he made a mistake, right, by giving himself an isolated pawn.
Mm-hmm.
So thankfully for you, he's actively making his position much worse, right?
Yep.
So I mean, this is why bad players are bad, because they'll basically actively help you win the game. So really, you were doing nothing to help yourself, but thankfully for you, he did something to help you. So as long as you understand that that's what happened, that's fine. But he was 1375. If this guy was say 1675, I don't think he would have taken back with the bishop.
Yeah.
So just something to think about. I mean, just because you won this game doesn't necessarily mean that you played great.
Mm-hmm.
But just notice how bad he's playing. Just notice how bad he's playing. So knight d4, rook e8, knight f5. Okay. So here after bishop takes, I mean, you could just play here right away, right? I mean, you're not worried about this. You're just gonna take with the rook and double on this. I mean, your idea is just to win this pawn, right? So I mean, how does he defend this pawn right now? Does he have a way? I don't really see it.
No, he can't defend it.
Yeah, right. I mean, the best he could do is something like this, and you just win a pawn, right? So, I mean, that probably would have been more accurate. But you see, again, this rook didn't really belong on c1 to begin with. I mean, it was hard to anticipate he was going to play c5 and then take with the bishop. But basically, you kind of wasted a move in having to play this and then this. So, I mean, just
Yeah.
little things to think about like that can affect how the game goes. Okay, so you got your knight to f5. Again, I mean, I would try to get a rook on the d file to try to attack this pawn, but okay. So then you took here. So your idea is you want to play something like this, but that doesn't even work tactically because he could always take first. But okay, so he took, and you played there. But again, this doesn't really work because he could just take first. So he did. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you're better here, but I mean, you could have just won a pawn like 5 moves ago, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, so yeah, I mean, you are better though. You have the open e file, and he has a weak pawn. So I don't know if it's enough to win though, because I mean, he can play this and this and challenge your rook. And your rook, unfortunately, has no squares on this file to go to. This is defended, this is defended, this is defended. If he plays king f7, this is defended.
Mm-hmm.
So he played king f7. Okay, so what's your big idea here? Okay, so here what I might try is... I mean, can you try something like... Well... Yeah, can you try something... See, the problem is, he has actually a threat too. Do you see what his threat is? In this position?
Not really.
Okay, well, he's threatening this, which forks these pawns, and if you push this pawn, then he wins this pawn, right?
Yep.
So there's these chain forking ideas you have to worry about. So you might have to be careful here. Like, originally I wanted to try something like knight c6 to b4 and try to hit... Whoops, those arrows are really bad. So I was thinking knight c6 and then knight b4 to try to hit this, but the problem is, as long as he defends this pawn, he can play knight a4, and this knight ending is probably drawn, so... I mean, you probably have to give up the e-file to try to just double attack this pawn. So probably something like just rook d1 and then move this knight again to b4 to try to attack that pawn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you play a3. So a3 I can't recommend. Because now, I mean, look at the way your pawns look now.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't be good. So I think probably better is b3. I mean, it's tricky because like he has knight e4 ideas and stuff, but like after a3, knight a4, what do? You have to play rook e2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he plays rook e8, and then what do? If you exchange, you lose a pawn, right? And if you play rook d2, he has rook e1 check and rook b1, and now you're losing. So all of a sudden, this a3 move kind of costs you big time. I mean, I don't think that's what he played, but I'm saying
Yeah.
like you have to make sure that when you make these pawn moves that you notice what's going on in this position. And this pawn actually becomes a real weakness, because not only are you depriving b3 of pawn cover, but also like if this pawn got to a4, he could cripple your pawns, and this pawn
Mm-hmm.
would never even be able to move. So even if you could somehow defend this pawn, with the rook and not have to worry about rook e8 and stuff, I mean, he has a legitimate idea of just playing a5, a4, and then locking these pawns up, and you really can't do anything to stop it because of how you weakened your pawns.
Mm-hmm.
So Okay, so he played rook e8. I don't know how he got out of this. Okay, so he took. Okay, he played king f1. Okay, so again, he can just win a pawn with knight a4. Okay, he played knight d3, so that's the inferior version. Because now you can play something like b4 and be relatively okay. So he played